own a Crown Victoria, you've probably seen something like this. It's amazing how many of the older Crown Vics have got peeling paint. I'm pretty lucky, mine is so far just in this small spot on top. Now, of course, you can go to a body shop and have your car painted, or at least parts of it painted. And that's not what this video is about. This video is about doing it yourself, saving some money, understanding that you're not going to have professional results, but you should be able to get at least acceptable results. Something that would at least prevent rust and further deterioration of your paint. So the first thing is to kind of peel back whatever's chipping off and try to find a spot where it's still adhering. So for me, that's a little bigger than a silver dollar size here. Next step, I'm going to sand this. I'm going to go ahead and use a power sander to save time. I'm going to put about a 220 grit here and sand a circle to where it's sheet metal in the middle and then fades out back to the paint. So probably about an inch around this, depending on what happens when I start sanding. If more paint just starts chipping off, this circle will get bigger. After you've sanded, then you want to clean it with TSP. That'll get wax, grease, other contaminants off of there. First, you want to clean a bigger spot around where you've sanded, because your paint is going to feather out from here. So the nice thing about the TSP is it doesn't have to be washed off, and it dries pretty quickly. You can also wipe it down with some rubbing alcohol. The next step is priming it. I'm going to shake it well, at least 30 seconds with the ball rattling in the can. You could hypothetically mask it off. I don't think it's a good idea to mask it off. What I do is mask it about like that, using what I call a portable paint booth. And then, just so that you can see, we're going to be aiming just a little mist of primer in this area, and let it dry for 5 minutes, hit another mist, and so on, and kind of build out from there. This is 3 or 4 coats now. Let each one dry about 5 minutes apart. And honestly, you could probably stop right there, and at least you would keep the paint from peeling. I'm going to let this dry real thoroughly now, probably at least 30 minutes to an hour. Then I'm going to hit it with a real light sand, a 4, 6, or 800 grit probably. I may start with an 8 and see if that's enough, and then work my way down rather than starting with the 4. And the goal will be just to get this to where when you run your fingers across it, you can't tell where the primer ends and where the paint is. Once I've got it smooth like that, then I'll start hitting it with real light coats of paint, and I'll try to feather it out. Probably going to be somewhere in there is my target area for the silver paint. And then once that's done, you can clear coat it, or you can just leave it depending on what it looks like at that point. And again, if you clear, then you want to feather out from where you were. Ideally, you would do the whole roof with clear for the best results, but that's going to require the most work on your part. It's going to require masking off a whole bunch of stuff, and ideally it's going to require you to have an area that's wind free to paint in. It's easy to paint small spots because you can put the box over it and paint. When you're talking about a whole roof, you need a much better location than outdoors on a windy Texas day. But just fixing a small spot like this, outdoors will produce acceptable results. It's not going to produce show car quality results, obviously. I figure if you bought a Crown Vic, you did it for the same reason I did. You're looking for an inexpensive car that gives you a lot of bang for the buck. There's no point in dropping $3,000 to $10,000 on paint after you bought a car that may only cost you $1,500, $2,000. Downside to rattle canning, seems like it takes way too long to dry. So once you do your primer, you really can't sand it for several hours, and that's assuming that it's a warm day and it's sitting in the sun drying. Finally hit it with the 800. The trick to sanding, your eyes can't see what your fingers can feel, so basically you want to make sure that there's nothing other than smoothness. If you feel any resistance or bumps or anything, you need to keep sanding, or just live with the fact that you're going to have imperfections show up in your paint job. You start with real thin coats and you just let them build up slowly rather than trying to spray a big thick coat. Now that may be different if you're actually using professional paint equipment, but when you're rattle canning it, thin coats is the way to go. So this has got 2 coats on it, and you can still see quite a bit of the primer. And I generally don't mask off. I just use the little box around it and try to feather it out so that it'll blend when it's done. So this is probably 5 coats maybe. To the naked eye you can definitely see where I've painted. I don't know if it shows up on the camera or not. So I have to decide if I want to put any more silver down or if I want to switch to the clear. I'm thinking a little bit more silver. I'm probably going to need to widen it a bit so that it kind of blends better, and then probably need to let it dry at least a week, and then I'll probably sand it a little bit and then do the clear. So doing it yourself with a rattle can, it's definitely not a quick process.